Vayishma Yisro, Kohen Midyon Chosin Moshe. Yisro, the Kohen Moshe, the Kohen Midyon, he was the high priest of Midyon, who happened to be the son-in-law of Moshe, the father-in-law of Moshe. He heard Eis Kol Asher Oso Elokim LaMoshe L'Yisrael Amo. All that Hashem had done to Moshe and Yisrael, his people, Ki Hotzi Hashem es Yisrael Mitzrayim, that he took the Jews out of Egypt. So the famous Rashi here, Vayishma Yisro, he heard something, and because of what he heard, it caused him to abandon his glory and even go into the desert. It's something that was so moving, so profound, and had such an impact on him, and that caused him to make this drastic change in his life. Mashmo Shamabo, Krias Yam Suf, Amalek. You heard the splitting of the sea and the Amalek, the war with the Amalekites. So there's the famous question. Krias Yam Suf, we understand. There's a question. How many miracles took place at the sea? 50, 200, 250. And we said in the Oshir that the world trembled as a result of what Hashem had done to the Egyptians. What does it say? Shema Yigozun, the nations heard of what happened, and they were angered. Chilach Ochaz Yoshe Ploshes, those who lived in Ploshes, they were overwhelmed they were paralyzed from fear. Edom, the princes of Edom, the Edomites were bewildered. Eli Moab, Mirad, the powerful ones of Moab were overtaken with trembling. Namol Kol Jechanon. All the inhabitants of Canaan, they just melted. That's how overwhelming hearing about Krias Yam Suf was. So it makes sense. Hearing that this is Hashem doing, and there was no ifs or buts. It's not attributed to anybody but Hashem himself. Therefore, Yisro made a decision. He's giving up whatever he has, because compared to this, there's nothing compared to this. So the first question is, if they all heard exactly what we said, what Yisro heard, as Moshe Rabbeinu had described in the Yoshir, how they melted and how they were overwhelmed and how they paralyzed from fear, because what Hashem had done on behalf of the Jews, the Egyptians. So why did they make the same move? Why only did Yisro make this move? It's an obvious question. Secondly, it says, in addition to hearing Krias Yam Suf, he heard Mechemes Amalek, that the Amaleks, they attacked us. Why is that so impressive? And we defeated them because we went to war. We talk about a nomad band, wandering people. They went and they attacked us. Why was that enough to move him to give up whatever he had to come into the desert, to become part of the Jewish people and to convert? Okay, we'll leave it for the moment. Yisro, Sheva Shemos Nikrolo. He had 7 names, Yisro. Ruel, Yese, Yisro Chovev, Chever, Keni, Putil. What does each name connote? Yeser Hashem Sheite Parsha Achas Batorah Vatoch Zevzeh. He's the one who actually advised Moshe to establish the judicial system. Yisro, what's Yisro? Shnizgaya Ki'im Mitzvah Susifalo Os Achsal Shmo. When he converted and he fulfilled the mitzvahs, they added a name whose name was Yeser, Yisro, Chovev, Shechiv V'Satorah. He demonstrated his special love to Torah. He gave up everything to receive the Torah in the Midbar. Chovev, who Yisro Shnem, Chovev, okay. Yeshomer Ruel, Avishal Yisro, Mahu, Tvonali. Chosein Moshe. he was the father of Moshe. Tano Yisro miskabed b'Moshe. Over here, Yisro was priding himself that he is the father of Moshe, and the Chosin Amalek, I'm the father of the king. L'shaovar, in the past, Hoye Moshe Tola Hagdul b'chom shnemar, v'yoshev el Yesach Chosno. He returned, this is when he received the prophecy from Hashem at the burning bush, he should go back to Egypt to be the Redeemer. It says he returned to Yeser Chosno. So there, Yeser, which is Yisro, he's referred to as his father-in-law. I mean, there's an obvious question. That then, the Torah is referring to Yisro as the father of Moshe. He's priding himself, he's the father of the king. But before, I mean, how else should he be referred to? He's returning to Yeser's father-in-law. That is his father-in-law. Over there, we see that Moshe attributes his greatness to his father-in-law. Because it says he returned to Yeser, his father-in-law. How do we see from that? Somebody asked me, where are you going? I'm going out to Florida to see my father-in-law. My in-laws, I mean, how else are you supposed to say it? Over there, he's returning to ask permission from Yisro to be able to leave to go to Egypt, because he had taken an oath that he's not leaving Midian without the permission of his father-in-law. So how does that indicate that he's valuing himself, that because he's the son-in-law of this person? Because he's referring to himself as the father-in-law of the son-in-law of this person. You know, we read in Pirkei Avos, Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shcheno. It's good for the tzaddik. It's not only good for the tzaddik, it's good for his neighbor. The neighbor who's exposed to the tzaddik, at many levels, the tzaddik has the subliminal influences which the tzaddik has on his neighbor. And the neighbor doesn't even realize how he's being affected, impacted, being exposed to this special kind of person. Moshe flees to Egypt to go to Midian. Moshe is not an ordinary person. Moshe is a holy person. As we see, when he killed the Egyptian by saying the name of Hashem. In many midrashim, when he was in Midian, I mean, he was a miracle worker. He's a man who radiated Kedusha. And he lived in the house of his father. His father was exposed to this for years. Moshe was in Midian, spent years there. He first returned when he was 80 years old. So a person who's exposed to this type of environment for this endless period of time. And now he hears this event, the Krias Yam Suf, which is one of a kind of a miracle. As it says that even the Shivcha Layam had seen things which Yechezkel Novi did not see. That's how great was God's revelation there. So hearing that, and there was no ifs or buts, that this was miracle, this was not witchcraft, how could you not be impacted? Mashmo Shemabo, what did he hear here at Krias Yam Suf? What about all the other nations, as it says in those Yoshir? The citizens of Canaan melted. The Edomites, they trembled. The Philistines trembled. They were shaken up, they were paralyzed. So why didn't they also give up what they had and come into the desert? What did Yisro? Why was he the only one? Mashmu Shamobo. What did he hear which allowed him to come? Which drew him into the desert, to give up all his glory? Simple question. The other question we asked was, we understand that Krias Yam Suf is what to be impressed with. What about the Amalek? He heard how we were attacked by the Amalekites. I mean, why is that so impressive? And because he heard that, therefore, this was cause that he should be drawn into the desert. So let's talk about the first thing. Chazal tell us, as we read a little bit later, that Yisro was excommunicated from his community because he abandoned idolatry. He was the high priest of idolatry, but he gave it up. And therefore he was excommunicated. And therefore, when his daughters were the shepherdesses, and they came, they were attacked by the other shepherds. Now, how did he become a monotheist? So Chazal tell us that Yisro Ovad Kol Avodos Hashem Olam. He served every deity in the world, and after serving and researching it and experiencing it, he came to the conclusion everything's false but monotheism. That's the only true belief. Everything else is false. So this is before the Krias Yam Suf. So a person is a monotheist, and you hear that the one you believe in brings about such level of miracle, everything which is transcends nature. There's nothing natural about Krias Yam Suf. And how Egypt was destroyed, which is the height of what represents evil. How could he not be drawn into the desert to give up everything, whatever that glory was, understanding and valuing what he believed in, that he internalized it, and as a result of that, he became a pariah. So when he heard Krias Yam Suf, he went into the desert to give up everything. He had a capacity to love Torah. He had a capacity to see truth at a level that even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't see it. And he advised him to set up a judicial system. But the other nations, being pagans, being totally blinded, it's an event, it's an impressive event, but it's not enough of an event that we should make a change in our beliefs and change our lives. Not at all. It's a one-time event. But Yisro, who had this capacity because he was a monotheist, and he went through the thick and thin of theology, when he hears this event, it touches him to his core. Okay? So if Yisro hears what happened, it's like so profound. Now, the question is, why is Amalek? Bilam says the first nation to be destroyed at the end of time is going to be the Amalekites. Why? So Bilam says, Reishis goyim Amalek, because Amalek was the first nation to attack the Jewish people. Therefore, at the end of time, when God is going to reveal himself and all evil will be expunged from existence, Amalek will not be there. Why? Because they were the first nation to attack the Jewish people. What does that mean? So the way Rav Hutton explains that pasuk, what's going to happen at the end of time? All truth is going to be revealed. So whoever's going to be there is going to have a capacity to appreciate truth. If Amalek attacked the Jewish people, what did he attack them? Attack us. The Edomites trembled, the others were paralyzed, the others melted. Amalek was not fazed. Amalek did not have the capacity to appreciate God's presence. Although it was so palpable, even though they didn't witness it directly, but definitely word got out what was happening. So if that's the case, how do you attack the Jewish people? How do you attack us? The answer is, the Medrash says, cites a pasuk in Mishlei, let's talk Amalek. The scoffer, the deprecator, the only way to deal with him, you have to destroy him. You can't reason with him, because if they could attack us when something was so clear, almost on an absolute level, how do they behave this way? Evidently, they have no capacity to appreciate truth. Therefore, at the end of time, they're the first ones to be destroyed. That's let's talk here. What Shlomo Melech says, the deprecator, you don't reason with him, you destroy him. Pesi Tarim, Yarim. But the one who was seduced, he could be wizened. Who is Pesi Yarim? The one who was seduced became wise. That's Yisro. He became wizened. He reached a level of understanding because it was only as a result of his lack of understanding. He was seduced by all the various elements of existence, but he could be wizened. So because Yisro saw Krias Yam Suf, and then he saw, despite the fact how obvious and irrefutable the event was, if Amalek could attack us, who says tomorrow, I won't have the lack of clarity that Amalek had? If that's the case, you know something? I'm going to become part of the Jewish people, not to take any chance that I could delude myself in the future, as Amalek today doesn't have the capacity to appreciate what happened at the splitting of the sea, and therefore he attacked us. Not only did he not embrace the Jewish people, but he attacked the Jewish people. To say, don't be impressed with them, if that's the case, what chance does humanity have unless you attach yourself to the base, to the source of Kedusha? So it's Mashmo Shama. He heard Krias Yam Suf. But despite the fact that there's a Krias Yam Suf, he heard it's possible there should be a Amalek to attack us. If that's the case, he better shore up his position and strengthen it and attach himself, because you never know what's going to be tomorrow. We find that Hashem does not associate his name with anybody until after they pass away, like even the Ovos HaKadoshim. It was only Elokei Avraham, only after Avraham passed away. It was only Elokei Yaakov, only after he passed away. Why? So Rashi cites a pasuk in Eov, because the person cannot believe it in himself till the moment he's no longer alive. As long as we have an evil inclination, we're talking about even the Ovos HaKadoshim, who were the Merkava. They were the Merkava. That was the location of the Shekhinah in the world. Even them, Hashem would not allow his name Elokei to be associated with them until they were no longer alive, because you never know what could happen in the last moment. How's it possible? You're the Merkava, the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is your location. How is it possible? You never know. That's the takeaway. Yisro had the takeaway. If Amalek can attack us after what happened, you can't trust yourself, no matter what. You never know what tomorrow's going to bring. Therefore, as a result of that, he gave it all up to become part of Klal Yisrael for that reason. Then he asked the question of Aristotle, did not believe in God. How could the Torah put the obligation on a 12-year-old girl, 13-year-old boy to believe in God? So B'chanan had explained that Aristotle, with his level of genius, because he had conflicts of interest to satisfy his material pursuits, he actually denied God's existence. But a 12-year-old girl, 13-year-old who don't have those conflicts of interest, they're able to see truth more easily. Therefore, it's incumbent upon them to believe in God. That's the reason. Yisro, he already was a monotheist. He had no conflicts of interest not to embrace the Krias Yam Suf, that this is God. So what about the rest of the world? If the rest of the world would have accepted the Yam Suf what it was, that means they'd have to abandon every level of their existence, their values, their perspectives. It all has to change. The conflict of interest was too overwhelming. Were they frightened? They were frightened. Were they paralyzed by hearing what happened? That the mightiest nation in the world was destroyed? Yes. But it's not enough to make a change, because they have their own spin on it. And because of that conflict, they're not changing. Yisro had no conflict, because Yisro already was a monotheist. Not only was he a monotheist, as he said, he had the influence of Moshe Rabbeinu all those years. So now when he hears, now this prime time, to hear Krias Yam Suf, it had the most profound impact on him, and therefore he gave up everything to go into the desert for that reason. Okay.
Rabbi, I understand a
little. He heard what Bilam suggested, to take an innocent people and enslave them. He held it was such a miscarriage of justice. It was so unconscionable. So his understanding of truth at that moment was, he couldn't tolerate it. And it says, Yisro Borach, he fled. You know what it means to flee. Here, the king of Egypt, the mightiest power in the world, he feels this is the right way to go. Yisro protested. His protest was by fleeing. That means for the sake of truth, that something which to behave this way, even if meant, he wasn't concerned about the consequences. He didn't even take the consequences and the ramifications of offending the king. It's a slight to Paro. Didn't make a difference. He left, and he's accredited for that. Like Yisro Borach, he fled. So as a result of that, he already had a capacity for truth, despite all the other reasons why not. Everybody remained silent. Bilam, of course. Eov, the great tzaddik, remained silent. And that's why he suffered all the way he suffered. All the trials and tribulations of Eov was because he remained silent. Yisro did not remain silent. He fled. Hearing all that Hashem had done for Moshe and Yisrael. So Rashi over there says, Shokol Moshe Keneged Yisrael. I mean, it should say all that he had done for the Jewish people. Why is Moshe singled out? Because Moshe himself is the equivalent of Klal Yisrael. The question is, how did Yisro know? The Torah is revealing it. He heard all that Hashem had done for Moshe and to Yisrael. From here we see Moshe is the equivalent of Klal Yisrael. I mean, from the Torah you do see it. But when he heard, did he hear that? Did he understand that? Yisro didn't understand that. How was he supposed to know that Moshe is the equivalent of Klal Yisrael? Okay, that's firstly. And why is the Torah telling us this at this moment? This is the first time the Torah is revealing to us in this parsha that Moshe is the equivalent of Klal Yisrael. Why is that important for us to know here at this point? We had said Moshe Rabbeinu was the only one qualified to receive the Torah. The whole story on the way back to Egypt, where he was nearly killed because he hesitated to circumcise his son. The Chazal says if he would have been killed, the Jews would have never left Egypt. So Tzipora saved the day, as we say, the merit of the righteous women. We were redeemed from Egypt because the only reason why the Jews procreated was due to the women enticing the men, because we had said we needed a critical mass of 600,000 males above the age of 20. Tzipora, a woman, she circumcised that child. And only because she intervened at that moment, Moshe lived. Otherwise, he would have been killed. He wouldn't have been a Klal. So why? It's not Moshe, it'll be someone else. So we explained that what was the objective of Yetzias Mitzrayim? What was the objective of the redemption? That we should stand at Sinai and receive the Torah. The Torah had to be given to Klal Yisrael. The only one who had the equivalent status of Klal Yisrael was Moshe Rabbeinu. His neshama was the equivalent of the neshama of the whole Jewish people combined. So when he received the Torah on behalf of the Jewish people, it was the equivalent of Klal Yisrael receiving the Torah. So when we speak about the miracles that was done on behalf of Moshe and Klal Yisrael, Moshe was only able to bring about these miracles. These miracles were a prerequisite for Kabbalah Torah. Him being Klal Yisrael, he was the one who had relevance, the only one who had relevance to be able to be the Redeemer, to take them out, because that was the objective. We explained Yud Kei Vav Kei, which represents God being infinite, and the Torah itself being the wisdom of God, God's wisdom. Only Moshe Rabbeinu was privy to understand the inner workings of that. Why Moshe? Because Moshe had that dimension of neshama, which the Avos HaKadosh and the patriarchs did not have that dimension of neshama. They saw Kel Shakai. God had unlimited power, but to understand the Yud Kei Vav Kei, which was the basis for the miracles, the makos, the plagues, only Moshe Rabbeinu had that capacity. So that's Moshe. So here it's before Kabbalah Torah. The Torah is telling us that the miracles that were done on behalf of Moshe and Klal Yisrael, Moshe is the equivalent of them, and therefore, as a result of that, he's the one who receives the Torah. He's the conduit to receive the Torah on behalf of Klal Yisrael for that reason. Lohem be'iri samon uber b'Amalek. All that Hashem had done, the man falling, that although they were in the wilderness, Hashem provided for them sustenance, the bear, u'b'Amalek. Sequentially, that's what happened. Amalek was a result of the splitting of the rock. Because they said after they had the water, they said, is God in our midst? That was the splitting of the rock. Right after that, Vayova Amalek. Okay? Kehotzi Hashem.
Rabbi, you said that couldn't have been a reason.
Because he heard all that Hashem had done on behalf of Moshe and Yisro Amo. Kehotzi Hashem Yisro Mitzrayim. The God had taken us out of Egypt. Rashi, Zugadola al Kulam. Taking us out of Egypt is the ultimate, the greatest. I mean, how's this the greatest? We're talking about this after the plagues. A person's a prisoner, and you destroy the prison, and you killed all the guards, and you're able to walk out. Being able to walk out, that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate miracle. Well, why is this the ultimate miracle? I mean, what preceded is the miracle. Walking out of Egypt is not the miracle. That God took us out of Egypt. We discussed this in the past.
I'm not sure really why you need to buy for it. I don't understand the question. I mean, Yotzi, because they left Egypt.
He said, Zugadola al Kulam. This was the greatest miracle.
That they left.
Leaving Egypt was the greatest miracle. What was leaving Egypt? Everything already preceded.
Well, isn't that included?
Once the plagues happened, they walk out.
Yeah, I don't understand why you're bifurcating. What? I don't understand why, Rabbi, you think there's a need to bifurcate. It's encompassed in the whole thing. Yeah, exactly. It's like the whole picture. Why is it? Well, I wouldn't bifurcate the leaving from the plagues. I think that's all.
No, so if that's the case, it's understood Zugadola Kulam.
I don't know.
Rashi citing the Mechilta. Leaving Egypt was the ultimate. If that includes everything, so of course that was what is it? That was everything.
And again, I can only understand the English, but it would seem to me to be all encompassing.
No, but I'm just saying if the leaving included everything that preceded it, right? So why it's not this is great? The whole event is something which is magnanimous. It's something which is not to be related to.
I see.
It's not this. What do I mean this? It's everything. It's the whole event,
right.
The whole 12-month event that took place.
Right.
Well, you mentioned in the past the curse that Bilam had put on, that a Jew never left Egypt, right? Except for Moshe Rabbeinu, who escaped when he was a young man.
That's witchcraft. That was all witchcraft. So that's not greater. Moshe fled. Moshe fled before.
I mean, now 600,000. Okay,
that's greater than all the plagues.
No,
not right. That's witchcraft. Witchcraft. It is. And it's not. The plagues were all miracles. God altered nature for them for the plagues.
Rabbi, you said we were at the 49th level of Tumah, and if we
after what we were exposed to. It's like a person has an infectious disease at every level, and humanly, there's no way to take the disease, the bacteria out of the system. We were so affected with this spiritual infectious waste. There's no way, even though we're going out, what are we going out as? People with levels of limitation, we have no relevance to spirituality. When we left Egypt, every aspect of our being was open for full rehabilitation. And in 49 days, we were fully rehabilitated. In the 50th day, we were ready for real time. So when we took us out of Egypt, that was the beginning of the recovery. That was a miracle. After Egypt, there should have been no hope for a future. We may have been freed physically, but to have a spiritual capacity all after we've been affected negatively with all that impurity, there's no chance. He took us out of Egypt. Why did he take us out of Egypt? For Kabbalah Torah. That was the greatest event accomplished in more than all the plagues themselves. It's similar to what you're saying. He had that full recovery even to be able to accomplish what he accomplished. Okay? Okay, we're going to stop here. We're going to do the Mishnah Berurah. Yeah, we were left off in Ches. We're still in the middle. Yeah. On the very top, we left off over here. We're discussing it. We said earlier that if a non-Jew brings something out of the tomb for himself, we allow you to benefit on Shabbos from it. We're speaking where you know it was picked before Shabbos, it was trapped before Shabbos. Although it was taken and brought from out of the tchum, it's not a problem. Before, if it was baked, if he did a malacha for himself, we had a machlokus. But something being brought from out of the tchum, which is only rabbinical, everybody agrees you could benefit from it on Shabbos because it wasn't on behalf of the Jew. But he says, you're only permitted to move it and transport it only within Dalet Amos, or a city if it's close with a wall. But the wall, when it was built, it was to protect the community. What does that mean? It's more narrative. The community was first, there was a community, and then they built the wall. Ustami Yoros, Ukaps Medira. We could presume that most cities, the wall around that was built to protect the population. That means it was first settled, and then they built the wall. Ustam Mifsorim, but if it's a fortification, Ein Mukaf and Ledira. Okay, so that's where we left off. So we left off in the Mishnah Berurah here. B'toch Arba Amos, Mem Gimel, Mishnah Berurah. Kol davar sheyotze chutz l'tchum os l'tatu chutz l'Arba Amos, av shebut b'achil b'mkoman. This is what we're going to discuss in Be'er. Anything you're out of the form within Dalet Amos, you're permitted even to eat, but you can't transport it out of the Dalet Amos. If the city is enclosed with a wall, we see the whole city as Dalet Amos. Mukeves Homo. Okay. What about if the city is encircled with the Tzuras HaPesach, which is a halachic wall? It's not a physical wall. That's also, right? The way we make Erevin in communities, you have a halachic wall, what we call Tzuras HaPesach. You have two vertical posts, and you have something horizontal going over the top of the posts. Let's see, the guy brings you something into your house. from out of the tchum, there's no question. You could transport as much as you want within your house. The wall initially was not built to protect the population, or he left it in the field. It was not within the walls. You're only permitted to move that object only within Daled Amos. Let's say somebody else had moved it too, and now it's in a location which is it's 2 amos out of the original Arba Amos. The item itself from the center has a radius of 4 amos. So if somebody had moved it 2 amos, you can only move it another 2 amos, because initially wherever it was, we see it from chutz l'tchum. You only have Daled Amos. While comes Simtov Aleph, time to Shom Kosov L'choyre Hebechzer, Taskos Yisha. Okay, we're holding tests. What about the suffix? It's a question whether it's brought from the Nam brings a Jew something, and it's a question whether it was brought from outside of the Tchum. Also, you're not permitted. So the question is, why not? So again, what are we dealing with? It's a davar sheish l'matirin. We said even though Tchum's drabonon, but a suffix sheish l'matirin, something which ultimately will resolve itself, we go to chumrah even though it's only rabbinical. Right? Suffix bear should hold to be Yom Tov. Egg, this question whether it was laid on Yom Tov or not, you have to wait till after Yom Tov to be able to touch the egg, to eat the egg. V'daf be'en Yehudi she'en yeshori imo be'ir. That's only if the non-Jew brings it to you, he doesn't live in the city. So there's a question, that's the basis of the question, he may have brought it from outside the city. Aval eni the shori imo be'ir. But if the non-Jew is a resident of the city, of the community, uperis mitzui be'ir, and this particular species of fruit is found in the city from before Yom Tov, you don't have to be concerned, because the probability is he did not bring it from out of the community, and also since that particular type of fruit is obtainable within the city, there's no reason to suspect he brought it from out of the city. The non-Jew has 2 homes. One is in the tchum, one is out of the tchum. So the question, where did he come from? Did he come from his city residence? Did he come from his country residence? Tol lahokil. Again, we say the probabilities, we deal with the leniently. Even the one who was born on his behalf, the presumption is we attribute it to what? To his city residence, not to his country residence. Okay? Let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Imusafik, Tess. After Sveik Drabonon Lakula, Gemara's question. Chumin are only Drabonon. So if that's the case, we should say Sub Drabonon Lakula. Also, Zemishim Davidov Shishel Matirin. The Efshel Hamtin Erev, since it's something that will resolve itself if you wait till after Yom Tiv. Therefore, even though it's rabbinical, we deal with it stringently. Chanal, Osur, Sosam Zekedas, Hagon Omrim, Dosim Sofik. This is the position of the Gaonim, the Mechaber, that they say it's not permitted. Chen Sosam Sif Tezayin, Loktas Matirim, Hu Beis Yosef, Udasa Yishom, Shibif Zayin, Vine Af. The Ledat Ma'af Motzei Shabbos Osam Zeh Bechdei Sheyaseh. We call Molkam Iskima Achroin Blein Motzei Shabbos Ein Lahachmer Bozeh. We had before the item that's brought on behalf of the Jew. So there was a question that even for the Jew himself, it may be permitted immediately after Yom Tif, or he also has to wait till Sheyaseh. So he says, the Achronim say, we rule like the more lenient opinion, that since it was not a Melacha D'Oraisa, he could benefit from it immediately. The Afilu B'vadai, Chutz L'Tchum Yishom, Dein Tzorch L'Hamtin B'chdei Sheyaseh. Al Kein B'Sofik Al Poponim Yeshus M'Kol Matirin, Okay. Ein lochush misofet shaper so elu hevim putz l'tchum badger b'min kan nims kan hoyu. There's a concept that if they're found here, the presumption is they probably came from this location. It's Gemara in Bava Basra. Yeah. Va'afilu, what's the afilu? Nun. And Miesh Ludi, the non-Jew has a city residence, has a country residence. And the question is, where did he bring it from? And we'll speak about the fruits can be found within the Tchum. The opposite is l'sapik. Shevi me'abayis sheish l'chutz l'tchum. Seemingly, up here, it's more questionable. If he has a home out of the city and he may have brought the fruits from there, kol mokum talin l'hokel. Till now, we assume that a non-Jew doesn't have a residence within the Tchum. So the question there is, maybe he was in the Tchum before Shabbos. But if he has a residence in the Tchum, but this non-Jew has a city residence, there's not even the basis to question maybe he came from out of the Tchum. The Aminon, again, the concept which the Gemara says in Bava Basra, kamnitzu kan hoyu, that if you find it here, the presumption is it was here. That we say it probably came from the home, from the city residence, not from the country residence. So let's talk about a situation like David has. You have an apple tree in your country residence, and you bring apples from your country residence to your city residence. Now we have a question. The non-Jew brings apples on Shabbos to his Jewish neighbor. And we know the source of the apples is from his country residence. Did he bring it before Shabbos or did he bring it on Shabbos? But there's a strong probability he brought it before Shabbos because he has a city residence. Even though we know the apples come from his tree that grows outside the city. What would you say there? We said before, if the species can be found in the city, then we attribute it came from the Tchum. To me, the connotation of that is, but if we know these fruits are homegrown and they come from his country location, I would say it'd be a suffix. And I'd say something the Dovshish Matirin, and I'd say you couldn't eat it for that reason. If it's a fruit that you could find in the city, in the Tchum, okay. Did it come out of Tchum, in the Tchum? Could have bought it at this supermarket, that supermarket. But if we know that the fruits he uses, that he eats, are only the fruits from his own tree, which is outside the city, I have a suffix. Did he bring it before Shabbos from that tree, or did he bring it on Shabbos? That's a suffix there, Shishal Matirin. You would not be permitted to eat the fruit. What do you think? David. That's what I would rule on this.
Rabbi, Sava She'embo Matirin, what is that? How does that work? What is that exactly?
Something that will resolve itself with time, like a Beishan Olam Yom Tov, right? An egg that was laid on Yom Tov is muktzah. That's called Shishal Matirin, because after Shabbos, muktzah has no relevance any longer.
I see.
Right, so the same. So even the suffix bay, it's a question: was it late Friday? Was it late Saturday morning? Shabbos. You're not permitted the egg. Suffix Rabbanon. Right. The answer is because if you wait till Motzei Shabbos, the question no longer has relevance. Because muktzah only has relevance on Shabbos, not after Shabbos. Okay.
And on the flip side, Sava She'enbo Matirin.
Yesh la matirin.
No, something that isn't permitted after Shabbos.
One resolve itself, then suffix Rabbanon L'Kula. That's a suffix Rabbanon L'Kula.
For example, what would be one of those?
Suffix Rabbanon. You have a question, milk falls into meat, right? And it wasn't cooked. Wasn't cooked. You have a question, did 6 hours pass? Right? Or didn't it pass? Are you permitted to eat? Are you permitted to eat dairy? That'd be sub drabona. Right?
Right, so it's a edible material.
That's animal material. No, maybe that would be a something that maybe that would be a material.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Why? Because if you wait the full amount of time, you're clear.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, and yeah, two food items. One's forbidden on a rabbinic level. One's forbidden is permitted, and they mix. And you're not sure which one you took. Which one is that? So that's not resolvable. It's either not permitted or it is permitted. Okay. Bishalakum would be a Savi Drabonon, right? Earn a year. Bishalakum. It's a suffix. Did the non-Jew cook? Did he? It's kosher. But the question: was the fire made by a Jew? Not made by, and it's not. You can't verify it.
So that's animal material.
Animal material permitted to eat the food.
You are permitted to eat the food.
Yeah, it's animal material. Sav Drabona. Bishalak was only Drabona.
Clearly, the passage of time doesn't change anything. And there's nothing's going
to. That's why it's animal material. But if you have a suffix, if you have a vessel, it's within 24 hours or after 24 hours, right? And something was cooked in it. What would that be?
No, then it does.
It does a shame of material.
Right.
Why? Because if it was cooked within 24 hours, it's a problem. Right? Cooked after 24 hours, it's not a problem because it's no stam lifnam. Then you have to deal with all the issues. Do you have 60 versus it? Don't you have 60 versus it? Okay. Let's go further. Okay, just have a few minutes. Enu Yudi Shemili Main Libepto Mibor Shu Brushus Hayochid Brushus Arabim. Mutal Israel Ashkosim Hem Bimhem. Hear this. A non-Jew drew water to water his animal. Mibor Shu Brushus Hayochid Brushus Arabim. He took it from Shayochid Brushus Arabim. The non-Jew. That means the non-Jew did a melacha with the water. He transported it from one domain to the other domain. The Jew was permitted to benefit from that water, to drink from the water, and to water his animal. But the non-Jew doesn't know who he is, doesn't have a relationship with him. Because it's a concern that maybe when he draws water for his own animal, he may add water to that drawing on behalf of the Jew. What about if he drew water up for the Jew to water the Jew's animal? Also, you're not permitted to use that water under any circumstance. Even for another Jew. Why? Because that Amalek Doraisa was done. The water was transported from one domain to another. The Mile Bor Shusayach the Carmelis. What about it was taken from Shusayach to a rabbinic public domain? Not a Doraiso. Mutal Acher Shlomili Bishvilo. It's permitted for a third party that the water was not drawn on behalf of that third party. What is this similar to? We had before by Tchum, right? We said Tchum and the Dragonam. So if a non-Jew brings something outside the Tchum for Jew A, Jew B is permitted to benefit on Shabbos. Right? We just had this before. Why? we had an argument. If a non-Jew bakes bread for himself, one opinion was that it's not permitted for a person to eat the bread, right? Although the non-Jew baked the bread on his own behalf. The second opinion is it's permitted. So there's machlokus. So we rule that there, if it's a bar mitzvah, you can rely on the legal opinion. But if food was brought out of the tchum on behalf of Jew A, Jew B could use it even on Shabbos. So the Mishra said, why? Because tchum in a drabonim. Because the prohibition of transporting out of tchum into tchum, that's rabbinical. So we only prohibit it for the Jew that it was done on his behalf, because we don't want to encourage him to do more of the same in the future. But Jew B, who has no relevance to that non-Jew, could even benefit on Yom Tov. Okay? Same thing over here. If the non-Jew draws water on for his own behalf, and he took it from Rosh Hashanah into a karmelis, which is only rabbinical, it's a rabbinical violation. The Jew could benefit on Shabbos. But if the water was drawn specifically for the Jew, for Jew A, Jew B could benefit from it, Jew A cannot benefit from it. Again, like we said before, because since it's only rabbinical, so on behalf of the Jew that the water was drawn for, we're concerned he may do it, he may ask him to do it on his behalf. But Jew B, who has no relevance to the non-Jew, we're not concerned, and since it's only this drabonon, therefore you can benefit from it. Okay? Mutalach shlamil bishvilo hago v'yesh mekilin v'omrim daf im huva derech shesarabim tzorch Yisro mutal odem lishos mehem. Hear this? He says, what about if the water was transported from the Rosh HaYochid through Rosh Hashanah for a Jew? Mutal Yisro mutal odem lishos mehem ho v'efshel leilach sham v'lishtos. Hear this? Since you could go to that location and drink the water from that location, therefore being brought through Rosh Hashanah is not a problem. You know this. If the malacha was essential to bring about the result, then it's a problem. So you benefit from a malacha d'oraisa. But over here, if the Jew could go to the location of the water, he'd go to the water cistern in Rosh Hashanah and drink water there, it's not a problem. So the bringing of the water into his house is only a convenience, but the water was available in either case. That's this opinion.
Rabbi, who is doing the bringing in this case?
The non-Jew is doing the
bringing. If it were a Jew, this is not possible.
Of course not. Definitely not. Definitely.
Okay. Even if the non-Jew is doing it directly for this Jew.
Correct.
It's permitted.
Because this is purely a convenience. But because the ultimate value could be achieved without the non-Jew bringing it, that's not considered you benefiting from what he had done on your behalf. Because it's purely, it's an accommodation. Okay, we'll leave this for tomorrow. We'll continue tomorrow. Let's see the Chovos HaLevavos. He had said on page 348, a person who puts his faith in his own capability, his own acumen, he relies on his wisdom, he says ingenuity, his physical ability, Yigal Barik. His toil will be for naught. Yachlish Kocho. Ultimately, he'll be weakened. And he will not come upon sufficient ingenuity to bring about what his desired result. God ultimately traps the wise in their own cunning. Shavti wrote Tachsa Shemesh. Shlomo says, I've sat and I observed in this existence. Kilo Lakalam Meiruts. The race is not for the swift. V'lo Lagibor Melchomo. Not the battle to the mighty. V'gam lo l'chem alechem. Not bread to the wise. V'omar kfir Moshe ve'evu. V'dor Hashem li'achzol kol tov. Okay, kfir, young lions, cubs, they are impoverished, they starve, but those who seek out Hashem will not be lacking in anything. So the obvious question. People who don't have bitochon, they succeed. I mean, you find both. People who are wise don't succeed. People who are not wise do succeed. Right? So what does that say? A person has he doesn't have a fraction of the IQ of another person. And he has the Midas touch. And the other person has a capacity not to be believed, and yet he doesn't succeed. What do you say? So clearly, it's not attributed to his wisdom, to his ingenuity, to his, either you say it's luck, it's pot luck, or you can say Hashem wanted this person, despite his lack of ability, he succeeds, and the other person, despite his overwhelming ability, he doesn't succeed. If the only person who would succeed is only the wise one, and that, he'd say, why does he succeed? It's attributed to that. But if you find many people who have wisdom and ingenuity and personality, they don't succeed. So what does that say? It's clearly, it's not that. That's the reason why it's not a refutation on the whole discussion over here.